The boys are back. Episode 7. 2 fans, 1 Paul. Myself, David Quist, my great friend KB Kirk Brown. Disclaimer: the first game the NFL's online, so if we're a little distracted here and there, that is why. Shout out Dan Campbell having massive cojones on a drive a couple series ago.
That was incredible.
And shout out whoever took Amon Ra St. Brown for first touchdown. But I'm gonna give it to KB. I'm gonna see how he's doing, and he's gonna have a rant about a little NCAA sucking a big dick because they suck. Take it away, KB.
Yeah. So obviously lines are on, beautiful. But it's a bad day. Tez Walker, his whole entire situation with NCAA. We highlighted it previously when we were talking about UNC versus South Carolina, how he was out for that game. The NCAA this weekend officially ruled that he's out for the entire season. I just don't understand what they're doing. I don't know. Like, I get they're like, well, you can't just have people transferring, but God,
everybody
JT
transfers.
Daniels played for his, as long as it's a star quarterback,
4 teams.
as long as all these things, and it's just a load of crap. The NCAA doesn't protect anyone. They don't help anyone. They don't do anything productive except milk the TV revenue that the conferences, it's the conferences that get all that revenue, and the NCAA just freaking is back there freaking milking it this entire time, and it's just so gross and disgusting. Let people play. It's not hurting anyone to let him play. You let people get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. You let players at Florida, I don't know if you saw this story, came out that he took a predatory loan where he got a $400,000 cash advancement, and the loan company got 15% of his pre-tax income in the NFL for the next 25 years. So it's just a load of shit.
Whoa.
They let all this go on.
Whoa.
They let, hands off, we can't set any goddamn rules, but you want to move closer to your sick grandma? Literally, NCAA, go and shove it up, dude. That's all I need to say about it.
Was that their D tackle?
Yeah, the Florida D tackle.
I did see something about that, but
yeah, it's just they don't care. They don't protect anyone. You got people flying across the country because they don't care about conferences or realignment, and they're like, this guy can't transfer closer to his grandmother. It's just a load of crap. Then they never make the right decision. I don't know how, but they're never like on the good side of a decision. You're not like, wow, I'm happy that the NCAA made a good decision here. It's just shit.
I will say, piggybacking on that, yeah, sucks for him. And that's trash by the NCAA. But back to the conferences, for me, that's like Stanford and Cal joining the ACC. I mean, ACC stands for Atlantic Coastal Conference. Stanford and Cal are on. They're by the Pacific Ocean, if I can remember geography-wise. So.
Yep, that's to the west.
It's like fucking. Imagine being girls soccer or
imagine
baseball,
being Syracuse, dude,
or baseball. Right. Either way, if you have
go
like
from
a
New
series,
York to Cal.
Imagine like having a series from Stanford or Syracuse, and you got to go. Obviously, they'll probably have smart logistics about it, but it's fucking stupid. I'll swear, I don't care.
It's gross.
NCAA is a nonprofit too. Everybody can look that up. I'm pretty sure, unless they changed. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no.
That's horseshit.
They're nonprofit.
All right. Off our little rant there, but a good way to start.
Sorry.
A little exciting because UNC sucks. We love college football. We love football in general. Shout out Lions. Let's get the dub. But we're gonna jump into some games this week to preview week 2. We got a handful of games, then we're going to jump in the Michigan State game. I will say the Michigan State games this week are a little dull, but next week State's got a big one, so we're looking forward to that. But we'll jump into the first game. I think the big name right now in college football is Colorado. So we're going to jump in. First game, Nebraska, Colorado. I think the line I saw was Nebraska +2 or 2.5.
Yeah, Colorado, when I looked it up on ESPN, was -3. So right in that 2.5, -3, Colorado was favored by.
Yeah. And I'll start off this one, KB. We can go back and forth, but it's very close spread, I will say. I think, can Nebraska finish a game is my first question. I know Matt Rule's got his hands full with everything going on, and obviously Colorado's riding high with Coach Prime, and them in beating TCU. Is TCU kind of a fraud? We'll see. I think Shooter Sanders could go off here. I think Colorado could win. But Nebraska's defense was looking pretty solid against Minnesota. But on the other hand, how good is Minnesota's offense?
Yeah,
so a little back and forth.
I would agree with everything you said. I mean, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Although TCU, got absolutely smothered by Colorado. Offensively, that Colorado defense didn't play that great. And they suffered a lot of rushing yards. And if we know Matt Rule's team, he's going to try and pound the ball. It is a Colorado home game. So that has to play, an important role into it. But it sounds like Nebraska
What the
is
fuck?
has nearly sold out that place
Sorry.
before on their end. So it's kind of, you don't know how it's going to be. Now, it comes down to the skill positions. Uh, obviously, TCU got dominated by the skill positions of Colorado. You got Sanders, who played great, Travis Hunter, Dylan Edwards, Jimmy Horn, Xavier Weather, all over 100 yards.
Hmm.
And how does that translate? Nebraska, if I had to guess, isn't going to be as passive defensively as TCU was. Uh, you know, Colorado still allowed 5 sacks, and a lot of TCU was one man blitzing. They weren't doing a whole lot
I think Nebraska
defensively to really
will be more
pressure them, and
aggressive.
I'll think Nebraska might be a little quicker. And we now have film. They have film for them to look at. We know what offense they're going to run. We know how they're going to try and attack us. It should be interesting, but I just don't. It's just so weird. The line scares me and throws me off. But this might also be a situation where everyone is going to hammer that line, and
Yes.
Vegas knew that, and so they juiced it. Everyone did that. There wasn't really anything. Nebraska still might be favored. On their end, they're like, hey, if everyone puts the money here, we could have a huge winner. I just don't see so much that Nebraska's skill players in the cornerback and safety room are going to be able to run with these guys. If TCU struggled, I doubt Nebraska is going to really be able to.
Yeah, I will say I think Nebraska's defense is probably better than TCU's, but I can't see this being a three point game personally. The way Colorado's offense looked, but maybe Vegas knows someone we don't, and it's a weird, crazy, close game. It's kind of a rival game, throwback Big 12, right?
Throwback Big 12. Yep.
So, it could be fun to watch. Hopefully, we have the TV going to the tailgate, and we'll have this one on for sure. But I do think Fox has kind of jumped the bandwagon for Michigan, and now they're riding Colorado because that's what they do. Shout out Joel Klatt, who actually went to Colorado but rides with Michigan, it seems like, more than his alma mater.
Oh, Dave, now you're just being jealous. It's not his fault that Michigan's the only good noon game on all of last
The
year,
noon
and he has
kick
to
is
preview like
bullshit.
six games. The one thing I also wanted to point out though is Miles Sasser or Satcher. He's their starting safety. He made the game-winning tackle. He's out with an injury, undisclosed, but will be missing this game. Now, early on in the season, Colorado has a lot of very skilled guys, a lot of transfers, but it's going to be important to see how their depth plays. Or how much is the drop off? Because they haven't had any time to recruit to get a bunch of guys in there to build up their strength program. They're really relying on everyone else right now. Everyone else's program, and so if you have a few injuries in that secondary, although Jeff Sims looked abysmal against Minnesota, can he put some drives together?
Right.
I guess we'll see. I think Colorado is going to be able to be really aggressive defensively, but Matt Rule's a good coach. Colorado or Nebraska also was looking at hiring Sanders. So I mean, it's just you have a whole lot going on kind of in this whole entire process. I think this should be a really good game, and it's an early kick out here. Obviously, I think 9 o'clock it'll be. So I'm excited to kind of watch this one play out. It's going to be interesting one way or another to see how Colorado evolves as a team. You don't want to peak the first week of the season, and
Correct.
it's very difficult to play a better offensive game that early. And obviously, we'd expect the defense to get a little better to tighten up. They couldn't really tackle any of TCU's players.
Yeah, I think it'd be a fun game to watch, and yeah, I think Colorado wins and covers personally, but would love to see a nice little close game. And if Nebraska wins, we're wrong, but that'd be pretty cool. But they can't finish games last year, so hopefully Matt Rule can turn
Yeah,
that around.
last 2 years, it's a culture thing in there.
Yeah,
They haven't been able to have they bring people in, they bring transfers in, and it's the same thing. It's like the program's cursed.
yeah,
So I don't see Colorado doing anything other than controlling the ball. But Nebraska might slow down the game. TCU played really really fast. There's a ton of possessions in that game, and that your athletes are athleting more and more and more. Versus Nebraska might slow it down. It might be limited possessions where that keeps it close inherently too. So it should be a fun matchup to see. Everyone can be good once. Now you have to build on it, and it's going to be interesting to see if Colorado can build on it with their team and with their profile. And I think they can, and I have them winning this game as well.
gotcha. Good
And
takes.
covering.
I think this next one's fun personally. Ole Miss, Tulane. The line when I looked earlier today was Ole Miss minus 7.5.
That's the line I have.
Yep. The notes You want to start this one off, KB, or
Sure.
go ahead?
I'll start this one off and ask you a question.
Oh yes, please.
So, obviously Jackson Dart is their quarterback. Transferred in from USC. They had two other transfer quarterbacks that came in. He beat all of them out. Last year he threw for just under 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He had 334, 4 TDs in the first game.
Mhm.
But that's not the first name I wrote on my info sheet for Ole Miss. Guess who the first name was that I wrote?
Damn, I didn't look at the stats enough. I looked at just like the basic stuff.
No, but like what player? It's a player. What player did I write about Ole Miss?
I'm drawing a blank.
Quinshawn Judkins, their sophomore running back, who last year as a true freshman had 1,500 yards in that offense. He was absolutely fantastic, dominant. You didn't hear a lot about him, honestly, which is a sad thing because he was a dynamo. I mean, this offense went with him. They'll ride him in this game. He didn't really get a ton of carries week one, but this man is built. He came in and handled a ton of carries as a true freshman. I'm excited to see this dude just run wild. That's kind of what I'm predicting. Tulane, for all their ability, didn't necessarily have a lot of depth in that front seven I saw, but that's the first name, and that's who you got to talk about. Did you know that the 1,500-yard rusher, Quinshawn Judkins, true freshman?
Did not know that, but I'm looking at his stats. First game, 13 carries, 60 yards, 2 tutties. So, if he pounds the rock 20, 25 times, I can see him having a good day, especially against a team like Tulane that might be a little bit stepped down. But the first thing that I've written down is Tulane's quarterback, 14 for 15, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
I don't really care who you're playing. That's pretty damn good stats. They played
yeah, and you even look.
South Alabama, the Jags, but still, that's an
Yeah,
efficient
you
day.
even look back to last year. He had 3,000 yards, 63% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Now, they did lose their star running back. Tajay Spears. He was their offensive catalyst, 1,500 yards last year. He's off to the NFL. He is on the Texans. But it's going to be interesting to see how these two quarterbacks battle. You have obviously differences in skill level. I think secondary wise, you look at what this Ole Miss team does and what Lane Kiffin does, and they get transfers in. Anytime they have issues, they plug gaps. Um, Ole Miss lost their top two receivers from last year. They pick up two in the transfer portal. Jordan Watkins,
It's at
formerly
what
Trey
I like
Harris.
about this is it's at Tulane. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I do. It's down there in Louisiana. We know it's going to be hot, probably like 108. How does that kind of play in? You have the Tulane players out there all day, but another player, he was injured week one. He got a knee scope in the offseason, but Zachariah Franklin, a UTSA guy, he's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, so they might have kind of held him back in the first game. That might be a guy to kind of look at on your radar. But this receiving core is going to be good. Running back are good. O-line, they're returning 4 starters, and the only guy they lost was an All-American. So I just kind of look at how well this team's put together. Ole Miss, 7.5. You got to kind of factor in Tulane. I just don't know if they can last against a big, powerful running game, a big, powerful team. It's just going to be kind of different to kind of see how these two teams can kind of attack it, because I don't know if Tulane necessarily has a back that can carry a load where we know Ole Miss can, and sometimes in these warmer games, that's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. I want this to be a close game. I love when mid-major teams that have had a good season before play a good team at home. I love that. Shout out to Ole Miss for actually going to Tulane. A lot of bigger teams would not do that. It looks like, from what I'm looking at in stats-wise, Tulane ran the ball with, 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah,
So
they're trying to find their RB1.
definitely a good point by you. I would like to see Michael Pratt, Tulane's quarterback, have a nice efficient day again. Maybe more passes to see what they can do. Do I think South Alabama's a better opponent than Mercer? Yes. Ole Miss played Mercer and destroyed them.
Correct. Yeah,
Um,
they both had pretty dominating week ones. So
yeah. If I'm gonna make a pick here and kind of talk through that. Like I said, I want it to be a close game, so I'm gonna go
Take it,
with
Dave.
Tulane in the 7 and a hook. Maybe they
Yep.
lose by touchdown. That hook right there that pulled me in. I think Tulane's for real. Who'd they beat in the bowl game? Was it USC?
USC.
So
Yeah.
even though they might have lost some guys, they don't have a true running back one. I can see them, hanging in. They got, they're solid team. They got some players. Their quarterback's efficient. They run the ball okay, 4 or 5 a carry, and their defense, gets a couple stops. This could be a high-scoring game, the way things are looking. But I'm gonna go with Tulane with a 7 and a hook. I think that hook really helps me take that pick. Maybe they lose by a touchdown, but I would love to see Tulane with the upset here.
Yeah. I mean, and this is Tulane's not 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 necessarily only big game this year because they have some big. I think they're in the AAC. They have
Yeah.
some big American opponents. Um, but it's the game that's gonna decide their season. Like if they make this, they can make a New Year's Six bowl. If they win this game, like if they only drop one more game through the season, they're gonna be vaulted in the top 20. You know, SEC teams are always ranked high at the beginning of the season. They always stay in the rankings. So if you can kind of hold on your resume all year, a top 20 win as a group in five, and you only win like one weird Thursday night game because your conference is weird like that, um, this is their big game. But I look at this Ole Miss team. What they have this year that I don't know that they necessarily have is continuation of care. So they've had Matt Corral for 2 years, but they didn't have a consistent running game or consistent receivers. And now I feel like they kind of put it all together on the offensive side of the ball. And their defense, isn't necessarily lights out, but they've always been efficient and good. And I just really like this Ole Miss team to kind of give me, I'm gonna take Ole Miss. I think they're gonna cover. The big thing here that I'm thinking is Ole Miss probably was looking at this game for a long time. It's their big out of conference kind of opponent. You have to kind of win these if you have any chance of competing in the SEC. You have to prove yourself. You get kind of an early season work. So I really like Ole Miss to be a well put together team that's confident and makes this Tulane team, which has less skilled players, make it look like that, and build yourself some confidence. This Tulane team's good, not to take anything away from them, but I think Ole Miss has top 15 capabilities this year, and I don't think Tulane, with some of the players they're missing their 5 returning leading tacklers from last year. That's just a lot of carryover, even with some transfers to replace. So I like Ole Miss.
I respect the pick. I'm gonna ride the green wave. I hope it's a close game. I want that hook, so hopefully it's a touchdown game or so. But hopefully we can jump back and forth at the tailgate. It's a 3:30 kick, so that'll be on when I'm in the stadium. So I have to try to get some updates and watch highlights later on. To the next
They'll only
one.
they'll only be 12:30 here. I'll be
You'll be fine.
enjoying.
We're on
I'll
Big
be
Ten,
I'll
so
be
don't worry
relaxing.
about us playing nobody. So next game is a pretty good matchup in my opinion. We got Texas A&M versus Miami. The spread I got here is Miami plus 4.5.
Yep.
My first note I wrote down earlier today: who is the better quarterback? I can't remember A&M's quarterback's name, but
Wigman.
Wigman
Connor
he
Wigman.
made his
Wigman.
first start last week, correct? And
I think he had a start last year. I think he played.
okay,
I know. Maybe he didn't start, but he played,
played,
like in
okay.
game. Like he had like 15 pass attempts in a game down the stretch. But he didn't really play. He wasn't their go-to guy. He was kind of filling in, I think, for Max Johnson, who was their lefty that transferred over from LSU. Um, the quarterbacks is going to be a big thing here. One of the things that we have to look at before we talk about the quarterbacks is both quarterbacks were in the system last year, and they both have new offensive coordinators. Josh Gaddis got ran out of town after 1 year in Miami. He got
Any
the
idea
boot.
where he is now?
He's at Maryland,
Okay.
and obviously, sounds like some internal turmoil. And Bobby Petrino, they needed someone else to run the offense, someone to put the hands of the offense, so it was competent, so they looked dynamic, so they weren't making the mistakes that they were making so much in Jimbo's offense. And you just kind of look at it and you're like, yeah, this makes sense. So it's gonna be weird because both these players weren't necessarily dynamic last year. So I'm kind of looking at this game of like who everywhere else who has the strengths.
Mm.
Like where do these teams really shine? And A&M loses their leading tailback, A Chain. I mean, I don't know how much you watched of him last year. That dude, if he had a
Solid.
hole, I mean, he
was
was
good.
so dynamic, so dynamic. And it's hard to replace a guy like that for your offense, for kind of your tempo. They have a few different guys that are going to be running back there. Mari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens, who's a true freshman. But they still need to find that number one guy. They didn't really find it week one. The rushing game wasn't very good. But I like Wigman. He has a very quick release. He underthrew about 3 deep balls where the guy was beat by 3 or 4 yards and he kind of threw them back into coverage. So that's something to kind of look at. But Tyler Van Dyke didn't look great, honestly, in his win. Now I know he put up some decent numbers, but he floated a lot of balls. Did you watch either of those two? And who do you like in that matchup? I prefer Wigman. I think the ball gets out a little bit more on time. I think he has a bigger arm. Tyler Van Dyke looked a little messy in kind of all of his footwork and kind of his composure, and he floated a few too many balls that could have came down if they were playing a tougher opponent.
Yeah, I'd probably give the edge to Wigman just because he had the day last week. I would say Van Dyke has more experience, but it doesn't seem like he's has it all figured out yet. I was looking at some stats and highlights, and it looks like A&M's got a really good receiver in Stewart, 8 catches, 115, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give that to Wegman and his guys, but I also see that the running back for the U had 9 carries, 90 yards, and a touchdown. So maybe they're a stronger run team right now with Parrish. Um, it's in my opinion they're both kind of question marks. I don't think either guy's really made a statement that like he's the guy. Obviously they're starting for a big college team, but Van Dyke had all last year, and like you said, Gaddis kind of messed him up earlier in our podcast. So I'll give the edge to Wegman, and I would like to see Van Dyke kind of show up, but I have the U to cover, so I'm gonna have
Ooh,
to run. I'm gonna
a
pick
4 point
Wegman
cover.
4.5. It's a weird point. It's a weird little cover, but that's what I have. Just because when I was looking at stuff, it seems like it could be a defensive game. Both teams kind of played, mediocre games. I think A&M played New Mexico, Mexico
Yep.
State, and Miami played Miami, Ohio.
Yeah.
So nothing crazy offensive wise. Miami only gave up 3 points. A&M only gave up 10 points. I think this could be a defensive game, but I would like one of the quarterbacks to kind of show up more. So right now, I give the edge to Wegman, but if Van Dyke wants to be, a Power Five really good quarterback in a pretty solid conference with everything that's going on in the ACC, he's got to show up.
Yeah, looking at these teams, I like that quarterback pick. I agree here with what you said. Tyler Van Dyke was on and off starter last year, and obviously you kind of had a Pultrid offense. Um, but when I look at this A&M team and kind of the skilled players that they've been able to collect, you have Evan Stewart, who's the one. He's a true sophomore. Last year, he was really good. You had a guy that started for them that put up about 600 yards last year, and he's in the 2 deep now. So he's backing someone up because freshmen and sophomores have made leaps ahead of him in that wide receiver core. And then the real difference that I think we're going to see in this game is Miami's offensive line is put together. They have a few transfers. They have a freshman starting right tackle, and this D line for A&M is pretty gross, man. They're high ranked recruits. They're blue chips. They've all invested there. They got about 6 dudes between the 3 positions. Not including outside linebacker that plays and overshadows the edge, and plays in the over position that rushes the passer. But they got 3 guys in there that are really going to be productive in this game. You got Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, and Shamar, I think Trent is his last name. And I think those guys are going to control the run game where they struggled so much last year. They couldn't stop anyone running the ball. And their secondary was one of the best in the nation. They really didn't graduate anyone out of that secondary. I like A&M here. For the most part, because Miami isn't going to really have home crowd advantage. That stadium doesn't
That
really
stadium
fill up.
does not fill up. I can
It's
confirm.
whack. They fill it up the next day whenever the Dolphins play, but they tell
Yeah.
everyone they have too much going on and college students can't get over there.
It is not
It,
close to campus. I can confirm.
yeah, I know that, but still, all the Dolphins fans find a way to get over
Bring
there.
back the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, right. And I think that right now Miami's not really at that point in their tenure. Mario Cristobal, as much as everyone loves him, he's just not necessarily the guy to win these big games early on. I think it's going to take him 3 to 4
years.
years if he gets that time to establish his culture where he wants to build a strong, aggressive O line, build it out from there, get his own QB recruits in, get his own wide receiver recruits in, and I think Jimbo has been able to get the players. He just hasn't put his players in good spots. Now that they have a coordinator that isn't trying to run a too complex offense and is going to just get the best players the ball, I really like A&M to be a tough out in the SEC. And I don't think like I said, Miami's just there. I do like their defensive line. They are returning a good bit. Their two leading sacks guys, but I don't think they're going to have enough juice. And if their home field advantage was a little stronger, I would definitely take them. But I just don't think A&M is going to be very much affected.
Yeah, all good points. I'm gonna just ride with my pick with Miami with the 4 and a hook. I see 4 right now. The stadium is cool. It can get loud, but they do not fill it up. I would agree. To your pick, I think Jimbo needs to earn his money. And the videos that leaked a year or two ago about A&M's, whoever was on a recruiting trip, like that's where the high donors are, and they point at the press box or they point in the nice suites. So, they're paying those guys. Obviously, it's NIL. I respect that. I get that. But, time for Jimbo to be worth his money.
Yeah,
And I think they need to definitely contend in the SEC. So I
developing those
respect
guys.
the pick. So I would like to see Miami to keep it close.
We're opposite here on the last two, so I like it.
Yeah, I know. I got to keep track when we do our review of the week.
Yeah.
Next game, I'll have KB lead it off, but I'll say who we got. We got probably game of the week here. Big game.
It
just
might
like
be.
game
It's
of the
probably
year.
game of the non-conference season, if we're being
Yeah,
honest.
I like
here.
that's true. That's true. We got Texas versus Bama at Bama. I got the cover is +7. Take it away,
Yep, that's
KB.
what
What
I
are your
have as
thoughts?
well. This is gonna be. I think it's either gonna be a fun game or a murder, and I don't know what to expect. You know what I'm saying? Like I just like
Yeah.
I have that gut feeling that this is one of those years where everyone's doubting Bama and everyone's like, "Oh, Bama's lost it. They don't know what's going on." And Texas is, the martyr this year that gets to get absolutely annihilated
They
because
didn't look that
Bama.
good.
Yeah, I mean, I just there's too much that doesn't make sense about Texas, and I want to get in the quarterbacks, but
Yes.
do you believe in Quint Ewers?
I did last year. He looked really good until he got hurt in this game. He hurt his shoulder. I had the Rice Texas game on last week, and it just seemed like Texas couldn't really get anything going. Obviously, they won, but Rice kind of stifled them. It seemed like. Um, Shout out Arch Manning being the backup. Everyone was talking big on him. I just had to say it one time, but Ewers should be the guy. He played really well last year at home, which I think can make a difference in this game. But I don't think he looked that great last week, and I don't think Texas as a whole did. And Sarkeesian is a goofy dude.
Yeah, when I look at the throws that he can make and that he consistently makes, it's like those aren't impressive throws. Like he doesn't make the tight throws. Now he's accurate when there's separation and he's accurate when he's on time. But like the big time throws, I just don't see him making those throws. Any deep ball floats. I don't know if it's mechanics. I don't know if it's how he's releasing it or whatever happens, or maybe he's just like still not over that injury. Which look, collarbone and like
AC
upper
joint,
right,
yeah.
that shit can last for years and years. But the last 10 games that I've seen of him, anytime someone gets, I saw Xavier Worthy have his dude beat by 2 yards, 3 yards, and he floats it out of bounds. I see Adenisi Mitchell, or yeah, the new guy that transferred over, um, that used to be called Adani or A.D. Mitchell from Georgia transferred over, and he had a dude beat by 3 yards, and he threw it. And it's just like any of those deep passes that we saw him make the scripted ones in the Alabama game the year before. Those are just floating on him, and if he isn't productive, if he isn't dominant, if he isn't able to put together that stuff, it's so tough to see them going into Bama and not winning, but even having a chance. Like, because if you become scared in passing situations, out of rhythm against very aggressive, very smart, this secondary for Bama is incredible. You got Kool-Aid McKissentree. You got
Shout
three
out.
or four
Great
other
name.
guys.
Great name.
I mean, yeah, top 5 name all time. You have a handful of guys. Now you lost 5-star recruits, but you're filling them in with 5-star recruits. And I just have some problems with that. Now, where I'm going to love this game and what's going to be the best part of this game is watching the trench play between Alabama's O-line, Texas's D-line, and then the reverse of that. It's going to be so entertaining. I watched their Alabama's game earlier, and they have 3 dudes on their O-line that are 350 plus.
Wow.
They got some
Big
units. They have
boys.
true freshman Caden Proctor
I wish.
from Iowa. Was committed to Iowa for a bit, then decommitted
Bama
after he
got an
got
Iowa kid?
Bama got an Iowa kid.
Wow.
This dude
Pay
came in
the
at
man.
369. This man is a goddamn unit, David.
Freshman.
And yeah, true freshman. And they have two other dudes who are huge on that O line, and they got Milrow that can run the ball.
Yep.
I'm gonna see a lot of read option QB powers, and that Texas D line, they have some dudes too. They have dudes in the 360, 350. They have a huge swath of people. So, I mean, when you look at this, it's going to be so interesting to see who wins this battle. Now, Texas let up a lot of pressure against Rice. I don't know how much of that game you watched, but
It didn't look great.
they were pressured. They were out of sync. I mean, Ewers hit his tight end in the side of the helmet. They were not in sync at all. So, I mean, I just like, what do you think? Can Alabama reload? Would be my question to you. At all the positions, they don't necessarily have the skill positions. And then, do you think Texas's receivers? They have 3 former 5-stars, a 5-star tight end. Like they have dudes. Do you think they can win enough to make Ewers' openings big enough to win?
I think Bama's can reload. We've seen Nick Saban do this for I don't know how long now. Shout out him coaching at Michigan State and leaving us for LSU. That's a dagger.
Nerd.
I think he would have been great if he stayed, but there's other stories about him too when he was here that are actually really great. He's talked about at Bama. But do I think they can reload? Yes. Do I think Texas's receivers can do enough? They probably will win, but can Ewers hit them when he needs to? I don't think so. Ewers, sorry. Probably not. I'm going to take Bama, and they're going to cover this. I think they're going to run away. I think you brought up the quarterback with Milrow. I think he's athletic. He can run. He can throw a little bit. That's all that really matters. And with a guy like Saban, he can scheme to win. He can scheme around his quarterback, which he's done before. And I think they'll do that with this guy. And obviously, all the guys behind him are good. They have a transfer from Notre Dame. Is their backup, I think, Buckner? Or
Yeah, Tyler Buckner,
Buckner.
and then Simpson is
they
the
all played a little
former
bit.
5-star guy. It's going to be interesting to see. You got Tommy Rees, former ND coordinator.
He's
I
at
just-
Alabama now?
Yeah, he left there after last
He
year
was
with ND.
pretty intense. He went with Buckner. He was yelling at him all the time.
Yeah,
Remember
well,
seeing
he
those
brought
highlights.
Buckner there, so he went. The spring game passed, and then he brought Buckner along. So there's obviously a wide open, quarterback battle, and
Yeah.
we saw Milrow win
He
it.
won.
Obviously, he's a top tier athlete. Everyone's, I think he had a 5 TD game, but it's against whoever. What you look
Middle
for in this
Tennessee.
offense is, can Texas mess up enough passing lanes? Kind of. I mean, this Bama team's going to score some points. They're so big up front. They're so productive and aggressive, and they got 22 5-star running backs probably. And I just don't know if Texas is going to be able to do it. And I think I've kind of fallen to the camp that this might be closer to a murder than it is to like a productive
At
Texas.
home.
It's at home. It's so hard
They
to
didn't
play
look
there.
good. Like you just said, I was looking at the stats. Like Bama had like 4 or 5 guys run for four or 5 plus carries each. So just hand the
Yeah.
ball off to some dude, and then if he's not fresh or not looking good, give it to the next guy. So,
Yeah,
why
I think a good game plan for Bama is going to be force Texas to stop your run game between you and your quarterback. You have to run your quarterback here. And then if they have to commit extra members to the box, hit them over the head. Hit them over the head. Really try to have a, grind and boom offense. Everyone talks about, oh, they're a boom and bust offense. No, let's grind out short yardage situations. Let's grind out quick completions. And then when we lull them to sleep, hit them over the head. They're not going to look like they did last year, but they got the offensive line to kind of change that narrative where they can be absolute units, is what I'm saying.
What's your pick then?
I got Bama.
Bama to cover.
covered.
Me too.
I
We're on the
mean-
same. We're back at the same page.
We're back on the same page. Yep.
I can see Bama winning by like 17 here, maybe 21.
Yeah, I mean, it
I
could-
hope it's
it
a
could end up-
closer game, but the way Texas played, I can't see it. And shout out, Bama like made a bunch of the Texas people sit up her deck because Texas did it to them last year.
Yeah,
I love the
yes.
I love the pettiness.
Same.
But one more game before we jump into our games, quick. Oregon, Texas Tech. At
Yep.
Texas Tech. I
It
got a
is.
couple quick notes. It's a sneaky away game for Oregon. Texas Tech lost to Wyoming, but their quarterback had pretty good numbers in that offense. Texas Tech likes to sling it around. Is Bo Nix for real? Could be. Bucky Irving for them went off last week, so that's Bo's guy. They lost to Wyoming, like I said, and I think Oregon wins. I'd like to see them pull away on this one, but Texas Tech might be better than we think, and they just couldn't finish at Wyoming.
It's always weird. You have Texas Tech, who obviously lost a very disappointing Week 1 game. They were originally slated to be pretty good in the Big 12 this year. Some were predicting them to win it, some finishing in the top half of it. And I see a team that we see it all the time. A team goes on the road in a weird, it's a little bit later at night because it's out in Wyoming. It's a weird environment. You're not in your normal accommodations because you're in a small town in Wyoming. You're not in one of these bigger cities. You're not in one of these huge college towns, and you just have a lackluster performance. And you just make one too many mistakes. I mean, it's not like they got blown out. It was a double overtime game. The reason why I didn't want to, because I asked for us to focus on this. I didn't want to talk about Utah and Baylor because Baylor got kicked in the mouth by Texas State, where this was a back and forth game
Correct.
that came down to double overtime, and the new overtime rules suck dick because NCAA again sucks at making their own rules and enforcing their game. And they end up losing that game because they had to go for two in the second overtime. Because back in the day, you could go for it, and then after the second one, you have to do it. Now they're trying to speed it up. Why?
Two-point
Because they need
conversions.
to milk that TV revenue because they can't go over on games. But anyway, I like Oregon to win this game, but don't be surprised if Texas Tech covers this spread and kind of puts up a bigger fight. It's going to be a real you need to come out and show it. And Oregon's on the high. They played Portland State. They scored a bajillion points. Oregon just isn't always consistent. And I mean, obviously, former Georgia guy over there. Let's just see him win this game. See him kind of establish himself in the early season. I'm not going to take Texas Tech in the points. I'm going to pick Oregon to win probably by 14, but expect this game to be closer than maybe you'd imagine a team that lost by Wyoming and Oregon just put up 70 goddamn points. So that's kind of what we're looking at there.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm gonna go with Oregon. I think it'll be closer. I can see a shootout too, so hopefully it's a close game. But what we're all here for. I think Michigan has another noon kick, correct?
No, 3:30
Oh, we're both 3:30s.
correct time. 3:30 correct time kick.
So we're both 3:30 kicks.
Yep.
Um, both games are kind of meh. I can lead it off if you'd like. We can talk a little bit about state, and then we can jump into the Michigan game.
Yeah, we can do that.
Is that
Actually, let
okay?
me start on state for you because
Perfect, perfect. Go
I have a
ahead.
question. I looked into this, and I can't help but think, looking at how Richmond fared. Now they
Not
outgained
great.
their opponent. It looks like 264 to 213, so they held them to not very many yards. But Nathan Carter, right? He's gonna. I feel like I just have a gut. He's gonna have a humongous game this weekend.
Could happen.
I just like that's what state needs
Is
is.
he gonna
I
play
mean,
what
whenever they've been
a
good, they
half
have a
though? You know.
yeah, but still, if you get, I mean, he needs to be the one. He needs to come out and get all the big time carries. Like, let's see that, and like he was definitely your best rusher last week. Berger had a touchdown early, but he was by far your best, most explosive rusher. We need to get him the ball. We need to give him it so when we're into Washington, we're confident. So outside of that, I just had like a gut feeling that Carter. I wrote his name down. Like I said, Carter, big game question mark. That's like the only note I have on him. But I just have this gut feeling, and I just wonder like outside of that, what are you looking for? But
Yeah.
it'd just be huge to see another Michigan State running back step up because that's what you missed last year. Whenever State's been good, they've had a guy that can make nothing, break 10 tackles, score, just dominate the opponent, and then good O line, obviously. But it's that running back that establishes himself. Is when State's been good.
Yeah, I think Carter could have definitely a couple big runs, like 50, 60 yarders, and that could be a huge. Maybe he has like 15 carries and has two huge runs that make him, 150, two touchdowns or something like that. Um, so I hope he has a big game. I like what we're doing with Berger. He's kind of a scat back, has some catches and runs a little bit. I think Jaron Mangum will be back as well. He's the third guy that was hurt. But he's a bigger bruiser guy, so hopefully we use him on 4th and 1, 4th and short. But what I want to see out of the game is complete just dominance of the game. Playing a Richmond team that didn't look great against Morgan State. Um, sounds like they have co-coordinators, which I think is always dumb in my opinion as offensive coordinators. When I was listening to another podcast today, it didn't sound like the guy that was covering Richmond was too high on them and that it wouldn't be close. So I would like to see Noah Kim be efficient and make good throws, deep and short, and make right decisions. I want to see receivers catch the damn ball. There should not be 5 or 6 drops again. We got to look crisp and clean for next week. And the defense needs to be dominant. I think they dominated Central very well. Only giving up 10 when they could have been 17 or 20.
Yeah, I think the expectation too is like not just like dominate, but like one of those where you're
Have a
like
complete
they didn't
game
cross the
win.
50 and a half. Like they didn't cross, like they didn't get close. Not that like, oh, we stopped them in the 25 and they went forward on fourth down. Like this team put up 286 or 264 yards of offense last week.
Against
Like they
Morgan
shouldn't.
State. Nobody.
Yeah, they should not sniff
Yeah.
the relevancy of half midfield.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd like to see us win like 42-7, 45, something like that, or a shutout would be really nice. I think a shutout is hard no matter what rank of football you're playing. But our defense needs to dominate the game. I'd like to see. I don't know how much they really throw the ball. I don't think we're really going to be tested until we play, Penix and Washington, which kind of sucks because they have some really good receivers. And when I was looking at their stats, they had both their tight ends had a good amount of catches. So, I'd like our defense to be a little more tested before Washington. But, we need to dominate this game. We need to get a push up front. We need to get some sacks, get some rushes, quarterback hurries, and hopefully we stop the run like we did last week. So, for me, just a complete win. Noah Kim to look good. Probably plays 3 quarters, and then Hauser gets some looks. Nate Carter hopefully has a big game, and we get Mangum back at running back, and just a cleaner game. Not a lot of penalties. I don't want to see a punt on the 5
Yeah.
get kicked into the back of the end zone. Just and I want to see better coaching. I think sometimes the play calling from Jay Johnson can be like, what are we doing? And sometimes Tucker, just if it's a holding call on third down, I get you want to push him back, but just decline it, give him the field goal, because that could have been an easy. If that's Washington, that's a touchdown. I'm not even
Yep.
going to double think that. If that's Washington, if that's Michigan, if that's Ohio State or Penn State, they're not going to fuck up like Central did, excuse my language, and not score any points. So
Yeah.
we got better coaching and a complete game by the players.
That's what I had too. I said, I mean, like I said, I'm a huge Michigan fan. Obviously, state sucks, but
Fuck Michigan.
I need to see rhythm. I need
Yeah.
to see passing game rhythm where you see Noah Kim get to the top of his drop. There's the guy cutting open, and it's on the money
I
because
think
that's
we have
what you need to
dudes at
establish.
receiver. I think
Yeah,
Glover,
I think you have
I
some
think
guys.
Henry,
It's
and I think
it's
Mosley, and we have other guys, Gates Jr., that didn't even do much. So I think we do have the dudes to do that. But yeah, I would agree with the rhythm.
it's getting those because they're young for the most part. Outside of what Malik Carr
And Trey
and
Mosley.
Trey Mosley, they're all young, and so you want to see those guys get in a rhythm with your young quarterback so that you can build on it. And this is the game because after this week, you have maybe not a great defense, but you have an overwhelming force coming to town, and you want to kind of establish that early. That was my note. Is I basically had the same thing you guys said. It looks like that. As bad as Richmond did play, they did have 4 turnovers, 2 missed field goals, but they did have 5 sacks. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get some pressure on Kim, see how that O-line kind of performs. I don't know if they have any good guys or if that was just because they're playing like Morgan State. But I just look at this game and it's like this is the game, right? You had your early game against the MAC opponent where you kind of kicked your feet in a little bit, and this is the game where you need to be competent. You need to put your head together and look clean. Because if you don't look clean in this game, you don't need to empty the offensive playbook. That's not what you need to do. But the basic offensive concepts that you'll run late in games, that you can win games on, that aren't tricks or anything. Let's
I'm behind.
baby.
I'm behind.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry, Dave.
Oh, did he go?
But that's what you need.
Now I'm caught up. Let's fucking go.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, Dave. I
What's
ruined
the
it
fight
for
song
you.
for the Lions? Cue that shit. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but
Sorry, go ahead.
that's what you really need to have there.
Hell
is
yeah.
just a competent offensive performance, competent defensive performance again, right? So one good competent offensive performance, and then you'll be in a better feeling position than maybe you would be without it against Washington, who's going to be a great team, and I'm so excited.
God,
to
I hope it's a
preview that.
close game because
So
last year
excited to look forward
sucked.
to that.
Last year sucked. But
You
going to
traveled a
Michigan,
long way to watch that, so
Seattle was cool. The stadium was cool, but it was. We actually almost had a backdoor cover too last year. Fun fact. But let's jump into the Michigan game. Obviously, nothing crazy going on there either. But love to hear your thoughts. I don't have much, but I would like to see my boy Ricky White kind of have a game again against you.
yeah. I mean, that'll be interesting. Week 1, they ran for 283 rushing yards in a blowout. They run a go-go offense, so it's really interesting. Brennan Marion is his name. He's basically bounced around to a ton of different teams. He was at Texas as the wide receiver coach for 2 years. He was at Pitt for a year as wide receivers coach. He was at like four other schools other than that. So you can kind of look. I always love looking at like new offensive coordinators and guys and head coaches if I'm not familiar with them on Wikipedia, because you can kind of see every place they've been. And this guy's been hopping around from place to place to place. Kind of sounds like I listened to an hour-long podcast to him talking about everything. And his idea of his offense is two things. So they run up tempo, right, which is what you would assume with a go offense is, right, go. But they run a really interesting concept out of the backfield. So they have a quarterback, a running back to his right, and then a running back to the running back's right. And so they run split concepts out of that. And he basically is like, I basically looked at old split zone concepts or like wing backed offenses, and you had multiple decision making concepts, RPOs. And he's like, they basically knew what they were doing. They just didn't have a passing element in any of this. And so he's taking that old concept, putting in a shotgun, and adding RPO game to it. There's a lot of misdirection. The running backs are fast and quick. Now, I don't know how well that's going to necessarily work against Michigan. Michigan has been caught with their, running around while teams try to get lined up. I was going to say something inappropriate, but they're running around, not lined up, while other teams are running their offense going quick. So this is kind of a good tempo check for them. But Michigan's D-line should kind of dominate the trenches. The one area that I've seen over the last 2 years of defensive coordinating from these professionals is college football runs a lot more misdirection, a lot more creative misdirection, mostly because the hash marks are so much wider. And so I might see some overcommitting from linebackers, from cornerbacks, from DNs. That might be something to watch out on. But defensively, I don't know a whole lot. They played Bryant, so who the heck knows? My points for what we'd like to see offensively is if they're gonna run a 3-3, they run a 3-3-5 and multiple scheme. If they're aggressive, just like TCU was, if they're aggressive, just like ECU was, where they're shooting linebackers down, I just love to see Michigan just say, okay, we don't even want to run. Like I will throw 13 play action passes in a row. I will keep calling because we got our OC back this week. Sharon Moore's back from his 1-game suspension. Like I will run play action passes until you stop triggering down every single time. It was very effective last week, and just no injuries. Will Johnson should be back this year, and I think Rod Moore or Makari Page, I can't remember who was out last week, but they could possibly be back, at least get a few snaps in, knock the rust off. But I'm interested to see how this group kind of works, how they operate. And it's another kind of not layover game, but it's not necessarily the stiffest competition UNLV with the first-year head coach Barry Odom. But it's all about, putting together a complete game, getting guys in the right spaces, O-line getting, off blocks, doing the right things. So I'm just really excited to see Michigan out there again. And last time there's craziness, and it's on Peacock, which sucks balls. So I wasn't really able to watch it the whole entire time, and
what are you
it's kind
guys
of
on
a mess.
this game?
We're
on Big Ten.
Think I honestly I have no clue.
Here, let
Probably
me look. You're gonna hear my clicking, but
I don't think it's Fox. Maybe CBS.
Weird. Let me look because we're on Big Ten.
It's a 3:30 game, and then
CBS. Yep.
So CBS,
yeah.
So
I would agree with all your takes. I think this could be like a game like for us. You guys got to dominate the whole game. UNLV is probably a better opponent than Richmond, and they have some weird concepts. So maybe it's close for a quarter, like we've talked about.
Yeah, maybe like a big play gets busted and it's 7-7 immediately.
Yeah, and then also because like how Michigan runs the clock, I think a lot of unders, like we've talked about this week, a lot of unders might hit just because how their offense is. And they run the ball a lot, but maybe in a game like this, they give it to JJ and let him throw it a little more. But I would like to see Corum and Edwards kind of have a bigger game. But you guys only have a test really for a little bit here, so I don't know how much they want to open up the offense and give it to these guys, especially both guys having minor surgeries, or in Corum probably had more of a bigger surgery than Edwards. So in my opinion, another dominating game for Michigan would be nice to see. I'd like to see them score more than 30 points. I think their defense is going to be solid. And they should shut UNLV down. But they have an interesting offense, like you're talking about. And Ricky White, shout out, former Spartan Dog, had a hell of a game in COVID. Rocky Lombardi just closed his eyes and threw it down to him the whole game, and it
20
seemed
times.
and it seemed to work. So
They could have just put one safety over top of him, and the whole entire offensive scheme would have sucked. But yeah, that was a funny game. I remember that. I was at your house.
you were at my house, yes. So I think Michigan should, have a big game. I'd like to see them score more points, like I said, and both running backs hopefully have a better day. And then next week it's not a really big game either. So
Bowling Green. Yep.
So kind of boring to talk about, but that's
We're
okay.
kind of on the snooze fest.
It'll get
Hopefully
better
they
as
play
the
well.
season goes on. Those
Yeah.
are all the games that I had in mind. Do you have anything else you want to close up on, KB, before we run into the weekend here?
No, dude. It's so good to be back and talking and
Football is real
focusing
back.
on football
NFL's back.
and NFL's back, and my whole entire week's now booked with things to do. So I really appreciate that NFL. But nothing other than that except one more thing. Go blue, baby.
I'm going to say go green, and hopefully the Lions finish out this game and get the dub, 14-14 in the third quarter. We're going to sign off, and we'll see you guys probably Monday or Tuesday. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.